Hi everybody, this is Alchemist2 and I'm back again with another book review. I recently read Rupert Sheldrake's The Presence of the Past, Morphic Resonance, and Habits of Nature. And this is a revised version of a very heady book, by the way. And what I'm going through, I'm positively fascinated by every chapter that unfolds. This was originally published in '88. It was published again in 2011. And I'm going to go ahead and read the titles of the chapters because they give away what the subject matter is about concerning morphic resonance. The first one is Eternity and Evolution. 2, Changeless Laws, Permanent Energy. Chapter 3, From Human Progress to Universal Evolution. Chapter 4, Nature of Physical Forms. Chapter 5, Mystery of Morphogenesis. Chapter 6, Morphogenetic Fields. 7, Fields, Matter, and Morphic Resonance. 8, Biological Inheritance. 9, Animal Memory, which I love. That chapter is fascinating. Chapter 10, Morphic Resonance and Human Learning, also very interesting. 11, Remembering and Forgetting, also a very outstanding chapter. Chapter 12, Minds and Brains. Chapter 13, The Morphic Field, Animal Societies. Chapter 14, The Fields of Human Societies and Cultures. Chapter 15, Myths, Rituals, and the Influence of Tradition. It's also another one I enjoyed. Chapter 16, Evolution of Life. 17, Cosmic Evolution. 18, Creativity Within a Living World. I really like his epilogue, and I'm actually going to finish with the epilogue because I feel like it is the greatest, most enlightening and uplifting set. I should say it's just a very positive light that it has on our society, on human beings, on humanity in and of itself. But everything that it covers goes into the forefathers of hard sciences and soft sciences as we know them, and theoretical physics, and it's extremely complex, and a lot of it went over my head, but most of it I understood because I've taken biology and anthropology, and anthropology is something I fell in love with and never stopped loving. It is the oldest of all sciences, and it speaks of how there is a collective consciousness, as what Carl Jung proposed, and I agree with this. I agree with that. I agree with just innate intelligence in human beings and animals and things being passed on from parent to child in our genetics, and it's just unbelievably good. He talks about the very spooky, unusual, eerie phenomenon known as phantom limb syndrome, and even those who have no limbs and are paraplegic have the same phenomenon happening, and science does not understand this. You don't have any nerve endings. How could you possibly be feeling like you have limbs that hurt? This makes absolutely no logical sense. That's the thing, the mind is such that we only know the tip of the iceberg, and what's underneath the iceberg is much more diverse and multiplicitous than we can possibly comprehend. But Rupert, he is very elegant and eloquent in the way that he goes across his his propositions, his theories, his postulations, and he's always been somebody who's looked into animal intelligence, which I absolutely love about him. When I first started reading his books, I thought, this is a kindred soul. He really believes that animals in and of themselves can be learned from. And he's right, because science, I think that science realizes that intellect is more than we can actually comprehend. It's just like anything else that just we try to grasp. Like, he talks about even words and of themselves, and how grammar by itself and word structure is just kind of meaningless. Is just, it depends on the inference or understanding, and perspective is all relative, like anything else. And he gets into cosmology, and he covers a lot of different topics in the growing world of science. And it's absolutely sensational. And it's 400 some page. It's actually 486 pages, and he goes at length here to cite all of this work. It's mostly his, and a lot of it comes from just these different patriarchs, mostly patriarchs of modern day sciences and everything that has formed what we know and what we understand, and things that we cannot. And he doesn't take for granted that there are a lot of elements that have yet to be uncovered. And what I really enjoy is, a lot of people get this wrong, but evolution in and of itself, and he immediately states this at the beginning of the book, it was not coined, that phrase, that idea, the theory, was not coined by Darwin himself. It was coined by Spencer. Spencer developed it. Natural selection is more of what Darwin is known for. And even Darwin mentioned there were flaws in his theory. But I'm an evolutionist, and I believe that evolution, and especially in where we're going, is very integral. And he talks about how people are getting smarter, how we're getting dumber in many aspects, and it can be, like in physics, it can be both. Both states can exist simultaneously, which is what drives me absolutely nuts. It's like it contradicts itself. It's very intriguing, and all the more marvelous, and just how beautifully crafted this universe really is. And he talks about multiverses too, which is one thing I thrill when people talk about M theory. It just makes me so happy. But anyway, like I said, there are a lot of different topics that the book covers, and I won't be able to go through them in the review, but read the book. It's more like a course than it is actual reading an actual book. And I'm thinking it's a book that it's a research book that you could go back and think about which scientist actually came up with this particular understanding of this process of thought. And I agree with everything that he says in the book, actually, just because he's so rife with me. He's a very intellectual man. You can tell that he knows what he's talking about. He like I said, he cites his reference points, and they're clearly delineated at the end of the. And then he has an index, a glossary, which I think, thank God, because sometimes you forget the definition of these particular scientific terms, and that's very useful. Of course, he talks about Richard Dawkins, another favorite of mine. Let's see. I'm just going to go ahead and read the epilogue, because I feel like it sums everything else so nicely, and just I feel like it sheds a very positive light on our race. I mean, I have hope for the human race. I really do. This is why I say that. We live in a world that was born some 14 billion years ago, a world that has always been growing and still grows, a world of developing galaxies and stars and planetary systems and planets. On this particular planet, life has been developing for over 3 billion years in an evolutionary process that continues in ourselves. I love that. I mean, we are stardust, Carl Sagan. The development of science is part of this very process, a process that science itself has discovered, first in the realm of life on Earth and now in the whole of nature. Although we now have an evolutionary cosmology, many of our habits of thought grew up within the image of an eternal, machine-like universe. There was no need for memory in the mechanistic universe because it was permeated at all times and in all places by timeless principles of order, the eternal laws of nature. But do these old ideas still make sense in an evolutionary universe? Were the laws for everything from the world, from protozoans to galaxies, from ferns to planetary systems, from molecules to flocks of geese, all present in advance, waiting the time when their harmonious ordering properties could be manifested in the evolutionary processes? Or is memory inherent in nature? I love that question. Do habits build up as evolution goes on? These are questions that we have been asking in this book. We explored the implications of both the view of eternal law and the view of evolving habit. We have looked at a wide range of phenomena in the chemical, biological, social, cultural, and mental realms, both points of view. Comparing the interpretations, yeah, I can speak well, that they offer, and we have considered various ways in which experimental tests could reveal which of these alternatives is in better accordance with the way things are. At present, the question is open. I love, it's just so humbling that he says right now, we're a little bit murky on that. In other words, we're still figuring it out. It's possible that we do, after all, live in an amnesic universe governed by eternal laws. But such a small and important word. It is also important that memory is inherent in nature. I agree wholeheartedly. And if we find that we are indeed living in such a world, we have to change our way of thinking entirely. We shall sooner or later have to give up many of our old habits of thought and adopt new ones. Habits that are better adapted to live in a world, to life in a world that is living in the presence of the past and is also living in the presence of the future and open to continuing creativity. Is just such a poet. He's such a wordsmith, and it's the way he speaks is so beautiful. And nature in and of itself is just such a marvelous construct and organism. I consider it an organism. Nature is living, it's breathing, it evolves, and we're learning. We're part of the organism. We contribute. Sometimes we hurt, and we don't mean to, but I think we're learning more of how to act in concordance with Mother Nature rather than take. I think this is what is meant to be. I think this makes more sense rather than being parasites in an organism and we're being expelled by all sorts of different horrible natural disasters that we have invoked upon ourselves. But anyway, I really think that the final statement I find very, very optimistic and uplifting, and I don't want to think of humanity as it's not. Like I said, we are not a disease. This whole thing is a system. It is an interworking. The design of it is just it's flawless, and we can learn from the patterns. He talks about symmetry, which I adore, and fractals and all that. And it's just the way he speaks is so enlightening and positive that there's hope for us. We have hope. We do have hope, and we shouldn't worry about killing ourselves, because there are people like Mr. Sheldrake and people out there that want to contribute, who want to further our understanding, to further our growth. Because if it's just like the whole principle of water in and of itself, because water cannot be stagnant, because if water is stagnant, then the creatures within it die. So water has to continue moving. So like Bruce Lee once said, be like water. That's all I have to say about Presence of the Past, and I absolutely loved it, even though some of it was just a little twinge a bit above my understanding, to be completely honest. But I do relish a good challenge, so it indeed was that, and a very good academic jog for my brain. Till next time, live long, prosper. Ciao, tutti.